What makes a good Souls-like game? You might think it's a game that's brutally difficult with no easy mode, or one where you have to be slick with a dodge roll to avoid attacks. Or maybe you even think it's good because you can wield the largest greatsword possible, put all your stats into strength, and go wail on a boss. But I'm here to tell you you're wrong. That's not what makes this genre so special, and unlike any other type of game you've ever played. So rest by the bonfire with me and let's analyze what actually makes Souls-like games so addictive. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to use the term Souls-like to refer to both games that From Software themselves have created and games from other developers that have attempted to emulate their style. There are many elements that add to the experience of a Souls-like, but the one that always comes to mind first and foremost is combat. In a good Souls-like game, combat is both punishing and satisfying. But how is this careful balance achieved? In a good Souls-like game, you can't simply mash the attack button. If you try, the boss will punish you, and most of the time you'll die in just 2 or 3 hits. You have to learn the enemy's attack patterns, and choose when to commit to an attack. The way that this works is a lot like a fighting game. Every attack you throw out has either some startup lag or end lag. The same is true for enemies and bosses, so you're incentivized to time your strikes when either they're in lag or you're in an advantageous position, such as behind them or above them. The beautiful part about this system is that the game will never stoop down to your level. You have to rise up to its level. The creator of the Dark Souls series and Elden Ring, Hidetaka Miyazaki, once said, "The intention behind the high difficulty of the games I direct is to evoke a feeling of joy and accomplishment in the player when they overcome these challenges." And I have to agree, the feeling of absolute accomplishment and satisfaction that you get when you finally defeat a boss that you've been working at for hours is unlike any other. And I think there's a lot of other things that add to the satisfaction of the combat as well. These games reward you when you time a parry well, or get behind an opponent for a backstab, by allowing you to land a critical blow on the opponent. These moments are exciting because you know you truly outplayed them. Another aspect of a Souls-like that's directly tied in with combat is stamina management. Almost every action that you do costs stamina. Attacking, blocking, sprinting, rolling, and even throwing an item or casting a spell. If you're careless, you'll be left staggered and the boss will crush you. It adds a layer of strategy to the game where you have to pick and choose which actions to do and when within your stamina limit. Every move you make has to be intentional and calculated if you want to find success. One thing that makes a good Souls-like game very distinct from any other kind of game is that it treats death as a learning tool. In most video games, when you die, it means that you made a mistake or that you failed. But in a Souls-like, when you enter a new area or fight a new boss for the first time, the expected outcome is that you will die. To learn enemy and boss attack patterns, you will have to die repeatedly, but you'll gain new knowledge on each attempt, which will let you push farther and farther into the fight. And eventually, you'll overcome an enormous challenge. Everyone knows that a good Souls-like game has to have secrets. You might find treasure that's hidden behind an illusionary wall, or an entire area of the game that could be easily missed if you're not being observant. They have hidden bosses that are completely optional but enhance the experience of the game, and items you can collect that do unexpected things. Perhaps the most underappreciated part of a Souls-like is player freedom. These games allow the player to allocate stat points into whatever they want to create their own build. These games have hundreds of weapons and spells to suit whatever playstyle the player is after. Plus, they allow you to do things like dual-wield weapons, or two-hand a sword for massive damage at the cost of defense. Good Souls-likes let the player choose what boss they want to fight next, instead of being stuck to a strictly linear progression. These games allow players to make choices that will hinder their entire playthroughs, like killing important NPCs or selling rare items. This level of trust in the player is rarely seen in the industry today. Another thing that separates a good Souls-like from the ever-increasing amount of imitators is unique boss designs. I'm talking about bosses that make you adapt and approach them in a new way. One of those bosses for me was the Hush Saint in Lords of the Fallen. He can go underwater and pop out behind you at any time. You have to listen for the splash of him jumping out to dodge his slam attack. This move will keep you on your toes, and you'll have to learn to rely on sound instead of sight alone to fight him. Another example is Ornstein and Smough from Dark Souls 1. It's a double boss that will really test your limit as a player. Ornstein is small and fast, while Smough is slow but powerful. You have to choose how to divide your attention and which to target first. Whenever you're fighting one, the other will probably come up behind you and hit you in the back. Dodging two different bosses at the same time is no easy task. A 2 versus 1 battle is inherently unfair, and while there's nowhere to hide in the arena, you can take advantage of the environment. By putting a pillar between yourself and the boss, it can give you a chance to heal or to get a hit on the other one. In a Souls-like, if a boss is forcing you to come up with new strategies to take it down, you know it's a good design. Another one of these moments for me was when I fought the Scrapped Watchman from Lies of P. He has very swift attacks, but he mixes in a lot of slow windups to throw off your attack and parry timing. Because of this, you'll really have to study his attack patterns if you don't want to get hit. If you've played Lies of P, you know that parrying is a lot more vital to the experience than most Souls-likes. When you perform one, you'll take no damage and be close enough to the boss to punish him. And with the right rings equipped, you get an attack boost for landing successful parries. The Scrapped Watchman essentially acts as a skill check to see if you've learned the parry mechanic. He even has these red unblockable attacks that you can only punish if you parry. These are just a handful of examples out of the countless number of good boss designs in the Souls-like genre. I could list more all day, but my next point about what makes a fun Souls-like is perhaps a lot more controversial, which is, in a good Souls-like, the developer messes with the player a little bit. Let me explain what I mean. The genre has always featured some frankly unfair but hilarious moments. Like a rock rolling down at you when you're trying to walk up the stairs, or opening up a treasure chest only to find out that it's actually a monster that wants to eat you, or suddenly being ambushed by enemies that you couldn't even see. These are all things that the player could never anticipate on their first playthrough. The developers are literally digging us a pit to fall in, but you gotta admit, it's kind of funny. This is kind of like adding spice to a game. Add just a little bit and it tastes great, but add too much and it can really backfire. If you've ever watched one of Iron Pineapple's videos where he plays random Souls-likes he finds on Steam, then you've definitely seen examples where this is taken too far. Games where he can't go 5 seconds without walking into some unforeseen trap. This creates some very annoying and frustrating gameplay for the player, so it is a very fine line that the developer has to walk. Another very unappreciated quality of a good Souls-like is smart level design. Level design with loops and hidden shortcuts that make the entire world feel interconnected. Maybe it allows for verticality with an elevator, or to open up a one-way door you saw earlier for a shorter route to the bonfire. These help to skip tedious sections when backtracking, and to circumnavigate enemies when fighting a new boss. Good Souls-likes often have central hubs that connect to many different areas of the game. No Souls-like does this better than Dark Souls 1 with Firelink Shrine. If you've ever seen a hub and spokes model, that's basically what the map is. Firelink connects to all the main areas of the game, and areas adjacent to each other are usually connected as well. But that's not the only way that Dark Souls world design is genius. It also uses verticality to brilliant effect. You have to climb and rise high up in order to reach Anor Londo, and descend deep underground in order to reach Lost Izalith. This builds upon the game's themes and gives the player a true sense of progress and accomplishment. Even though you don't get fast travel until the final portion of the game, you never really feel like you need it because all the areas are so well connected. It's the only game I can genuinely say I love backtracking in. There's one last quality of a Souls-like that can easily make or break the experience for me. A good Souls-like has atmosphere that tells the story of the world. Lies of P has rampant killer puppets roaming the streets. Dark Souls has NPCs that have given up hope and are slowly going hollow. Sekiro shows the bloody violence of war-torn Japan, and Bloodborne is gothic horror come to life. What Souls-likes lack in straightforward storytelling, they make up for with world building. These games have sad character backstories, lore from item descriptions, environmental storytelling, and boss cutscenes. All these things add up to create a living, breathing world, which is oftentimes a harsh and unforgiving one, where the odds are stacked against you. I'd like to leave you with one last quote from Hidetaka Miyazaki. Dark Souls is in some ways an incomplete game, and I like to think that it has been completed by the players, by their discoveries, as they moved along. I'd love to say that the nature of this incompleteness was completely deliberate, but it is both deliberate and by accident in different ways. If you guys enjoyed this video, leaving a like and subscribing to the channel would be a great help.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
A wizard.